What if the stories we think we know best, the really familiar ones, actually hold some surprising truths? Ideas that maybe challenge how we've always seen things. We often picture Jesus' birth, that classic nativity scene way, maybe a bit peaceful, a bit quiet. But digging into the actual accounts, it reveals some profound stuff that really connects with us today, especially when we think about, well, what's next? Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to getting informed. We dive into the sources, pull out the key insights, and hopefully give you a fresh take, maybe with a little bit of humor along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And today we are doing a deep dive into the birth of Jesus, looking specifically at what the Gospels of Luke and Matthew actually say. Our goal isn't just to, retell the story you heard in Sunday school. It's to uncover those details that often get glossed over, details that show God's deep care, but also humanity's, sometimes surprising lack of response, and how this ancient story might actually be like a blueprint for understanding big things still to come. We'll focus on getting the concepts right, pointing out common misunderstandings, and linking the history to truths that still matter.
Okay, let's get into it. And maybe the best place to start is with Mary herself. When we think of Mary, it's often this image, right? Serene, maybe a bit otherworldly, just gliding through it all, effortlessly birthing the Messiah.
Right, that's the common picture. But the reality in the Gospels is, much more human. Much more vulnerable, frankly. Luke's account shows us a very young woman, probably just a teenager, facing huge social risks. I mean, think about it. For 3 whole months, she knew this divine secret, but nobody else did, except maybe Elizabeth later on. Gabriel announces it to her in Luke chapter 1, verses 26 to 38, but that was private. Being pregnant and unmarried in a town like Nazareth, that meant facing public shame, being cut off, maybe even under the law then, facing stoning. It was a position of extreme weakness.
Wow, yeah, extreme weakness is right. And what's so striking, isn't it, is that God chooses that moment, that humble, vulnerable situation to start everything. He relies completely on the faith of this young woman with zero social standing, no powerful family backing her up initially. It totally challenges that idea that God only works through, the established or the important people.
Absolutely. That trust is key. And Joseph's part in this, which Matthew chapter 1 details, is really crucial too. It's easy to miss that Joseph wasn't told by an angel at the very beginning. He found out later when Mary's pregnancy was obvious. Matthew 1 verses 18 and 19 say his first thought was actually to divorce her quietly, to protect her from public disgrace. He was trying to do the right thing by her within the law.
So he needed convincing too.
He did. It took an angel appearing to him in a dream, which we read about in Matthew chapter 1, verses 20 and 21, to reassure him, explain God's plan, and confirm Mary was telling the truth.
Okay, so Mary carries this huge secret, this potential shame, alone for months. And even after Joseph believes her, her vulnerability doesn't just disappear, does it? Matthew chapter 1, verses 24 and 25 specifically says Joseph didn't have relations with her until after Jesus was born. So they stayed officially engaged, betrothed, in the eyes of everyone in Nazareth.
Exactly. For about 7 months living in that small town, she's under constant scrutiny. Think of the whispers, the looks, the judgment. You can almost hear the gossip, It wasn't a one-time crisis. It was this ongoing pressure.
It really makes you think, if God trusted Mary so much in her absolute weakest moment, working through all those limitations.
It says something profound about his willingness to trust and work through us, doesn't it? Regardless of how limited or weak we might feel. It's not about our resume, it's about his choice.
That perspective shift is huge.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of it not being an ideal situation, that carries right through the pregnancy itself, right?
Yeah.
Another misconception is that Mary had this, divinely comfortable 9 months.
Yeah, far from it, actually. While the Gospels are concise, the circumstances suggest a lot of stress. She likely didn't have great nutrition or what we'd think of as proper prenatal care. Just imagine the emotional strain, the physical toll in Nazareth, carrying this baby under those circumstances. The Messiah, the Son of God, enters humanity through this really challenging, very real, very unideal human experience.
Talk about humility. Starting from conception, even before birth, he's identifying with struggle, lacking any privilege.
Completely. It underscores that humility right from the very beginning. He wasn't insulated from the harsh realities of human life.
Okay, so that really sets a powerful stage. And then comes the census. Luke chapter 2, verses 1 to 3, gives us this historical marker. Emperor Augustus orders a census for the whole Roman world. Luke even pins it down further, saying it was the first one while Quirinius was governing Syria. It grounds the story in real time, real history.
And the reason for their journey is fascinating. Joseph, being from David's line, had to go from Nazareth down to Bethlehem in Judea, David's hometown, for this registration. That's Luke 2, verse 4. But the really critical question is why Mary had to go too. She was heavily pregnant. Why drag her on that long, difficult trip?
Right. That seems incredibly harsh. Couldn't she have stayed?
Well, probably not, because they were still only engaged, betrothed. For the Roman bureaucracy, for her to be registered as part of Joseph's household, she likely needed to be physically present with him. There wasn't really another way to prove her connection to his household for the census count. It just shows how powerful that Roman decree was. It forced their hand, even in her condition.
Wow. So this ordinary bureaucratic thing, ordered by a pagan emperor who knows nothing about Jewish prophecy.
Ends up being the very mechanism God uses. It's this incredible sovereign orchestration. This decree gathers all these descendants of David, many probably completely indifferent to the old prophecies right there in Bethlehem. The exact place, Micah chapter 5, verse 2, said the Messiah would be born hundreds of years before. It's almost romantic in a divine sovereignty kind of way.
That's amazing. God using Caesar's decree to fulfill his own word. Which brings us to Bethlehem itself. You mentioned Micah 5.2. The prophecies was clear. The ruler comes from Bethlehem Ephrathah. And the Jewish leaders, they knew this, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was common knowledge, especially among the scholars and priests. They knew the scriptures.
Yet, Bethlehem was just a small, quiet town. Despite this major prophecy, despite maybe even having a sense of the timing from prophecies like Daniel's 70 weeks, nobody seems to be camping out there waiting. It suggests people weren't really anticipating it, not in a practical way. They were too caught up in everyday life, maybe Roman rule, their own issues.
Exactly. Why wasn't Bethlehem buzzing with expectation? We even see later in Matthew chapter 2, verses 4 to 6, when Herod asks the chief priests and teachers where the Messiah was to be born, they immediately say Bethlehem. They quote Micah perfectly.
They knew the answer.
They knew it cold. But they didn't do anything about it. They didn't go look. They didn't seem excited. The knowledge was just head knowledge. It didn't translate into action or preparation.
That's such a disconnect, isn't it? The people who claimed David's heritage, who said they were waiting for the Messiah, were actively not looking for him where the prophecy pinpointed. It's a huge gap between belief and, well, actually believing it enough to act.
And this leads right into another big misconception, the whole silent night idea, that Jesus's birth was this hushed, private affair. The Gospels paint a very different picture.
Oh yeah, this part really blows that peaceful nativity image out of the water. First, Matthew chapter 2 tells us about this incredibly bright star, visible for months, guiding the wise men. That's hardly subtle.
Not at all. Then Luke chapter 2, verses 8 to 14, describes the shepherds. It wasn't just one angel quietly whispering. It was an angel, then suddenly a multitude of the heavenly host, basically. A massive choir of angels lighting up the sky, praising God and announcing good news of great joy for all the people.
That would have been loud. Astonishing. Probably terrifying. Definitely not silent.
And the shepherds themselves, they're told in Luke 2, verse 12, to look for a baby wrapped up and lying in a manger, a feeding trough. A manger wasn't some hidden, obscure thing to shepherds. It was part of their daily life, where they fed their animals. So they would have gone into Bethlehem, this small village now crowded for the census, and started searching actively. Imagine that scene. Shepherds rushing around, probably asking everyone, "Have you seen a baby in a feeding trough?" That would have caused a commotion, people asking what's going on. It's the opposite of a silent night.
But here's the really surprising part. Despite the star, despite the angelic fireworks, despite the searching shepherds creating a stir, most people in Bethlehem, even the descendants of David there for the census, seemed completely oblivious, or maybe just indifferent.
Right. No widespread celebration, no crowds gathering, just back to business. Maybe annoyance at the disturbance.
And the public announcements didn't stop there, did they? 40 days later, Mary completes her purification time according to the law in Leviticus chapter 12. And Luke chapter 2, verses 22 to 39, tells us they take Jesus to the temple in Jerusalem. And there, Simeon, this devout man the Holy Spirit was guiding, publicly recognizes Jesus as the Messiah.
Yes, Simeon takes him in his arms, praises God, speaks prophetic words about Jesus being a light to the Gentiles and the glory of Israel, right there in the temple courts. And then Anna, this very old, respected prophetess who lived at the temple, Luke 2, verse 36, she comes up at that exact moment and starts telling everyone who is looking for Jerusalem's redemption about the child. These are public declarations by respected figures.
In the temple, the absolute center of Jewish religious life.
Yeah.
Yet Jerusalem stays quiet too. No uprising, no official investigation, just nothing. It seems this baby, born in a stable, announced by shepherds, praised by these old faithfuls, he just didn't fit their picture of a Messiah, did he? He didn't offer any immediate political fix or advantage, so the powerful just ignored it.
It's a pattern, isn't it? People seeing signs, hearing truth, but if it doesn't match their expectations or serve their interests, they tune it out. And this pattern, the sources suggest, has a really strong parallel to the end times, to Jesus' second coming. Ah, okay. So connecting the first coming to the second. There's this idea now that lots of people who say they believe in the second coming are, actively getting ready for it. That's the assumption. But the parallel drawn from the first coming is, well, a bit more sobering. Think about the wise men again in Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. It's important to realize they arrived months after the birth. The star guided them for a long time, meaning the sign was persistent. Their arrival was actually the third major public confirmation after the shepherds and the temple event.
And look at their reaction versus the locals. These foreigners travel a huge distance, actively seeking, wanting to worship. Meanwhile, the religious leaders in Jerusalem, who have the prophecies, are passive or worse, hostile like Herod. They know the facts, but don't act or act against it.
That's the contrast. And the parallel suggested is that, just like then, many today who claim to believe, who know the prophecies about his return, might actually be too caught up in their own lives, their jobs, their worries, their comforts, to be truly watchful and ready.
It's not about being good versus bad people either, right?
Yeah.
Because Jesus himself said in Matthew 9, verses 12 and 13, that he came for the sick, the sinners.
Exactly. The point isn't about achieving some level of self-righteousness. It's about recognizing your need. Do you genuinely feel you need Jesus, need salvation, need his intervention, or are you sort of self-sufficient, relying on your own goodness or status?
So the sources suggest there will be some kind of future registration, maybe not a literal census, but a situation or decree that forces everyone to show their true colors, to make a clear choice.
Something like that. A moment where allegiance becomes undeniable, where actions reveal what's truly in the heart. It won't be about what you say you believe or what religious group you belong to, but about your genuine response, your proven need for him. Think of the parable of the sheep and the goats in Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46. How people treated the least of these, the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, that's what revealed their true relationship with the king. It's about self-proving actions stemming from a recognized need.
And we see hints of this indifference today, don't we? The sources mention things like huge locust swarms crossing continents or unprecedented heat waves like that one in Siberia hitting over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. From the perspective presented, these aren't just news headlines. They're like modern-day signs. People might see them, acknowledge they're weird or scary, but then just move on. They don't connect it to anything bigger. Don't let it change how they live or prepare.
It's that same pattern, knowing but not really knowing, seeing but not really seeing or responding. It mirrors the indifference in Bethlehem and Jerusalem back then.
So looking back at this whole deep dive into Jesus' birth, a really clear pattern emerges, doesn't it? God provides these clear signs, these abundant opportunities for people to see him at work.
He really does, time and again. But just as consistently, people often choose what's convenient, what fits their existing ideas, what serves their self-interest, instead of genuine faith that leads to action.
But let's not forget the angels. Remember their reaction in Luke 2. They'd been waiting. Separated from Jesus for those 10 months he was developing. Their joy at his arrival was so massive, so overwhelming, that they just couldn't contain it. They had to burst out and tell somebody, anybody, even shepherds out in the field, that sheer, uncontainable joy that's presented as the heart of real witness, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And compare that blazing joy to the religious leaders when Herod asked them about the Messiah. They gave the right answer, but it was like they were solving a crossword puzzle. Cold, intellectual, no passion, no sense of wonder or anticipation, which really brings the question right to us, doesn't it, to you listening? Where do you fall on that spectrum? Are you like the crowds in Bethlehem, just sort of aware but unmoved? Or like the leaders, knowing the facts but feeling no urgency? Or are you like the angels and shepherds, filled with a joy that makes you want to respond, to share?
God went to great lengths, showed incredible care, and you could say consideration, giving so many clear chances for people to recognize and receive the Messiah the first time. So the challenge for us now isn't just about what we know intellectually about Jesus or his return. It's about what our lives demonstrate. Do our actions prove that we genuinely recognize our need for him? And are we willing to act on that need, no matter the cost or inconvenience? It's less about comparing ourselves to others and more about that honest look inside our own hearts. Are we truly ready?